When I was a little kid, I was kind of surprised to learn that anchors did not know everything. I used to watch the news and I thought this anchor knows everything about news, sports, weather, activities going on the station, things going on in and around the world, around the city. And I was a little disappointed when I learned that they didn't actually know everything. It was a device that was giving them information. And that device is known as a teleprompter. And this is basically just a TV screen with the words, sometimes a clock, there maybe even be like a video display on the front of it that the anchors use to be able to read text. And the way it's designed is that this particular glass is at a 45-degree angle and there's a camera lens behind it. So with the television being mounted either above it or below it, it bounces that signal off this glass and the anchor is able to read it. Now, because it's at this particular angle, the camera can see through the glass without capturing the text that's scrolling by. So this allows the camera to see the talent or whatever's in front of the camera, but it also allows the talent to be able to read text that comes off of it. And if the person is very close to the camera, then you can actually see their eyes go left and right as they're reading the text. If your talent is further back, away from the camera, that eye movement is a lot less noticeable. So you can achieve something like that by moving your talent further back from the teleprompter and using a bigger font for them to be able to read. And so teleprompters are not just for basic uses on television cameras. There's also what are called speaker teleprompters. And this is a little stand that has a television on the bottom and a little reflective piece of glass higher up. So if you've ever been at or if you've ever seen presidential speeches, or if you've ever seen some people give keynote addresses for businesses, you may see that there's this little square piece of glass they're looking at, and that is the teleprompter that they're reading off of. And so you can kind of see in a lot of different variations. You can have a teleprompter down the floor, there's a little piece of glass there, and this one's actually sort of using a two-way mirror. And there are some that are designed so that what you see is a good reflection, but what everybody else sees just looks like clear glass. So teleprompters are a really good way to provide a person with information. Now, when teleprompters were first getting started, it was one very long piece of paper that had all the text the anchors were reading on it, handwritten out for them to read off the teleprompter. Later on, teleprompting and scripting got a little bit easier with the invention of the printers, like the dot matrix printers. They could then create a script and put it on a long, continuous sheet of paper. And then that script was run on a conveyor belt and it was put underneath the camera. And that camera is what fed the teleprompter and the studio camera for the speaker. And so in this picture, you have a person who basically has a lot of single pieces of paper that I can see. And as they go by, he's laying the paper out to keep that continuous feed going. It also gives the ability, if they need to change a story out, he can just get rid of those pieces of paper and get the next story ready to go. We've gotten better at teleprompting because we've now switched into computers. So things like laptops and desktops can now take a basic text file and translate that down into another file that the teleprompting software can understand. So in this particular case, I've got a bar that says Panda Watch in brackets. This tells me that this is the name of the story. This is going to be read by Ron. And this is also going to have a clip called Bump A1 and A17. So the bump I know is going to take me into a commercial. So here's Ron saying, coming up next on Channel 4 News. And so I can see who's reading it, I can see what story they're on, and all that goes in the teleprompter for the anchors to read. And so in the case of if it was Janice or somebody or both anchors, you could see both their names in so they could tell who's talking, who's not. And this is also one of the neat tricks that if you've ever watched the news and you've seen one person start reading a story and then the other person finishes it, that's because they can see where the separation point is on the teleprompter without having to practice it too much at one point. Now, from time to time, the teleprompter may go down, and for that, there's tends to be a backup. Now, for a lot of stations, they've moved over to tablets, e-readers, things like that, iPads that will also have the script. But one thing that you always have to be careful of is that if you're an anchor or you're a talent, that you're on the current page that the story's on. Because if that is not the case, then you could be in for some bad times. So our two talents here are on the wrong page, and as the teleprompter went down, they were struggling to find out where in the script they were, so they were constantly going backwards and forth. They wound up being rescued because they have a little an earbud in, and they're able to talk to the producer of production. So the producer was able to say, "This is about puppies," or "This is about this story, and this is your reporter." So he was able to get them a little bit of the information, and that's how she knew who the reporter was, because the producer probably told them in their ear just to kind of get them off the air to keep them from having to search for their story. So with teleprompters, you're able to help your subject, who may not be very articulate, who may not know all the facts, the ability to look like they actually know everything that's going on. And this is one of the reasons why you do see a lot, especially in like presidential discussions, presidential speeches, that they sound so eloquent. They sound very good at what they're speaking, because part of it, they practice what they said, but also with teleprompter, the text is there. So if they've got a 30-minute speech that they've got to recite, they don't have to pull it off their noggin. They can just read it off the teleprompter. And so with that, you do have the ability to kind of help out your talent and to keep their mind on track.